All right, so Lincoln, what is the most unhinged international basketball game you've watched over the last year?
It's got to be the Japan U16s in the Asia Cup. That was pretty unhinged.
Does the U16 Division C European Championship count?
100%. Yeah. Why would you do that to yourself?
T- Today we're going to talk about some fun international basketball. Awa Fam, 6'4", center out of Spain, only 18 years old, 2026 WNBA draft prospect.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Welcome. You are Locked On Women's Basketball. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. My name is Cruse. I'm your Saturday host covering the WNBA draft and prospects across the world. I'm joined by my co-host Lincoln Shafer today to really dive into Awa Fam, who is one of the very best prospects in the entire world. I would say top 5 pretty
Yeah,
easily for
I
me.
think she's probably the best player under the age of 20 right now in the world.
You would say she's better than Juju as a prospect?
It's close, but like definitely outside of the U.S., she is the best player under the
Right.
age of 20.
To really understand her game a little bit more, like I said, 6'4". She just turned 18 a few months ago, so she was playing for Valencia, which is one of the best teams in Spain. Didn't play a ton of minutes last season, was playing behind some experienced pro players. She played in the second division, but she's been so dominant for their youth teams in Spain. Should have made the Olympic roster, in my opinion, but she did not. This coming season, she'll be playing for Jernica. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's also in Spain's first division. She is on loan from Valencia. They have her under contract, though, in Valencia for like 5+ years from now, so they are invested into her long term. But for Awa this summer in U20s, 11.3 points, 7.6 rebounds, 3.9 assists at 6'4". Truly one of the best passers in the world. We'll talk about that later. 64% from 2, 25% from 3, 67% from the free throw line. To really understand the 2-point efficiency more, she shot 71% at the rim. And
Yeah.
the crazy thing is okay, so I've been at Overtime Select and watching a lot of different youth prospects.
Mhm.
They go by FIBA rules. FIBA rules, there's no 3 in the paint. It's awful. It's awful spacing. Any drive, the entire everybody's collapsing. There's
Mhm.
just Sienna Betts standing there. It's like 6'4", just occupying the paint. Awa is 6'4", finishing through traffic at a 71% clip.
Yeah, her footwork in the post especially is so good. She's deadly out of the short roll already at 17, 18. Like the way that she sets screens, rolls to the basket, turns those into post-ups and uses her pivot foot is so advanced. She's like just she's dusting these kids out of their shoes, just wide open layups because she's pivoted her way into being open. She debuted with Valencia at the age of 15 years and 5 months, becoming the youngest player to ever play for the first team at Valencia, men's or women's. Um, she's just a special, special athlete. Like you can watch her for 2 minutes and it just immediately clear that, oh, she moves different from everybody else on this court right now. If you want to go watch the first 3 minutes of the U20 Euros final against France this year, it's she scores 7 points, has two really solid assists, covers so much ground defensively, and deters several rim attempts. It's one of the best 3 minute stretches of international basketball that I've seen out of a prospect.
I didn't mention it already. The youngest MVP at U20s
Yeah.
basically ever. And this event has had a lot of different players that played in the W.
She has 2 more years to play U20s, and she was already the MVP of the U20 Euro tournament.
And what I realized like 20 minutes before recording this podcast, she's playing basketball this week for their U18 team. Just loves basketball that much that she's playing U20s, immediately now playing U18s, when she's just far too good for her own age group. Already in this tournament at 18 years old, playing against other 18-year-olds, 75% from two. If you account for some more inefficient mid-range jumpers, it's probably like 85% at the rim for her.
She's averaging 15 points and 11 rebounds per game in that tournament.
Just the offensive polish.
Offensive basketball player.
Yeah, and she's someone that's been on our radar for a minute now. We mentioned her in our best prospect of all time as an honorable mention. She's that good as a prospect for us.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out like what kind of player she compares to. And I'm not going to say any of the names that we compared her to because it feels weird, but I will say that we compared her to 4 players, 2 men's and 2 women's, that have combined for something like 7 MVPs, 6 Defensive Player of the Years, and 3 Finals MVPs. She's in that tier of player.
It's just it doesn't make sense, and I don't think we've talked about her passing as much as we probably should.
It's absurd how good of a passer and how good of a decision maker she is.
The thing with her passing is because of what she can do as a scorer, in my opinion, she's scheme proof. If you double her, she's making any pass in the book, cross court skips, she's finding a read from the mid post or whatever. You single coverage, that's just too easy. She's going to a spin move, she's going with a reverse. It's almost impossible to stop her there. She just always knows where her teammates are. Just her visual processing, the overall way she sees the game is unreal for a teenager.
Yeah, the court mapping and the processing speed is like so good. The number of times in that final where she's like, no, teammate, you're supposed to be on this side. Come to this side. You're supposed to be over here. And then immediately like taking that positioning and using it as an advantage where she can just create easy layups for her teammates. It happens so frequently. She's not always setting great screens, but there are times when she is setting these bone-crushing screens that will just create layups by themselves. And the other thing that I think we'll probably get more into in segment 2 is her defense is really advanced.
Yeah. In the semifinals against, I believe it was Italy was playing a zone. And how Spain...
You just can't play zone against Spain.
How Spain was running their offense against this zone was just playing everything through Awa in the middle. And she was just making some insane passes. She had 9 assists in this game, 15 points, 7 rebounds, 3 steals in 26 minutes.
Yeah. The French tried to play a little bit of zone in the final too, and just got torn apart. It's ridiculous how like good the Spanish team was at moving without the basketball and finding cutters. Both Awa Fam, Elena Buenavida, Alicia Flores all made good plays against the zone there.
I really like what Spain does with their offense.
A lot of fun.
I believe their head coach on that team is the same coach that coaches for Valencia as well. I'm pretty sure it's something like that. Just the understanding of what Awa's skill set is, how to maximize her game is just so clear throughout the entire tournament. But in segment 2, we'll talk about more on her defense. We'll also touch on her WNBA interest as well and where she would rank for us in the 2026 draft class so far. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to find time for it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. If you didn't know already, Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Moving to segment 2 with Awa's defense, what was your impression on just her versatility and what Spain really liked to do with her on defense?
Yeah, she can play whatever scheme you want. They had her in a drop a lot, and her positioning in drop is very good. She's like in spots where she can deter the driver and also recover to the roller. She's just in places where she can use her length and her athleticism to cause havoc against any kind of offense. She's switching 1 through 5, which is something that is not necessarily her strength right now, but she has the tools to make that a strength of hers. She's hedging. She's playing whatever scheme you want her to play. At age 18, she's a plus in all of those scenarios to me.
The craziest part is I would say her defense is maybe her worst skill.
Yeah, she has all the tools, but it's just not quite there yet. She hasn't put it all together.
The fact that she's like actually good on defense and that's her worst area, besides like shooting on offense, like I think she's got some ways to go there. But as far as her defense, just the tools, like you said, the versatility to just do a lot of different things, the size and strength combination as a player that is only just turning 18 doesn't make sense. Like, you look at this player and the most valuable archetype in the WNBA is a center/forward that you can run your offense and your defense through. And that's basically what Awa does already at 18, 19 years old. And we didn't mention comps. We're not going to really say, okay, this is the player we're comparing her to. But to really compare what Asia Wilson looked like as a teenager to what Awa looked like as a teenager, Awa is a more advanced player. Like, I think just a better player at the same age. Both were like two of the best players for their U19 teams, U20 teams. But overall, I just think the two-way skill set is just unmatched.
Yeah, it's really absurd what she's doing on both sides of the ball.
Like I mentioned, though, the shooting is probably her biggest issue. And for me, I think she's going to shoot. Like, I think she's going to make spot-up threes. I don't see off-ball pull-up shooting, but you don't really need that from her. You don't need her to be a pull-up shooter. If she can just make spot-up threes and her shot's a solid one-motion shot, I think it's got some projection there. If she draws closeouts, I think it's over, and this is one of the best prospects ever.
Yeah, the shooting is an interesting one because the numbers aren't necessarily great at any level. You just don't have the sample size of minutes with the senior teams to really get much projection out of it. But she's had these kind of stretches at the youth tournaments where she's just 9 of 19 from the free throw line, like she is in the U18s right now. But she'll also have games like the final against France where she just is making free throws like it's automatic. The jumper looks better than the numbers are to me. There's a little bit of cleaning up that you can do with the hands at the top of the shot, and just like where she's at is in positions. But yeah, I think that you can absolutely project the shot to be a plus for her. She has great touch around the rim. She has great touch in that little like 5 to 10 foot range. So I think that you can pretty easily project her to be at least an average 18 to 22 foot shooter, which would open up so much of her drives and her post ups and the pivots. And if she can find like a fadeaway, that's like just another option in her already devastating arsenal of post moves. It's just going to be so hard to stop her.
Just the main thing with a lot of young prospects at her size is they can usually just overwhelm players with just their strength in their physical advantages. But for her, you see the processing, you see how she reads the game, her footwork. There's so much skill beyond just her physical advantages that makes me feel comfortable that this isn't just an early peak player, someone that's going to stagger developmentally. Like I said, she's playing U20, she's playing U18s, just playing a lot of basketball, and I just really believe long-term this is one of the best prospects.
Yeah, there's a lot of finesse. There's a lot of skill to her offensive game, which is not something you see out of 6'4", 17-year-olds a lot. And that's something that you definitely want to see. And it's not like she's playing massive minutes in any of these tournaments either. But
They were
she's still
blowing
putting
them
up
out,
these.
yeah.
Right, they're winning by tons because she's the best player on the floor by a significant margin.
Yeah.
Like if you normalize these stats to be playing like 30 minutes a game, it's something like 18 points and 14 rebounds instead of, like 12 and 8. It's just truly she's putting up insane statistics in her age group, and like she's shown these flashes at the next levels. She made the senior national team for some of the trial stuff in the Olympic qualifying tournaments. She just did not make the Olympic roster. She's going to be a mainstay on the Spanish national team for years.
Their mindset might be just let's let her play U20s and U18s this summer rather than being on the Olympic roster and being at the end of the bench or playing like 5 to 10 minutes a game. If that's their perspective, it makes sense. But for me, I just think that she probably could have played rotation minutes. But
For sure.
in segment 3, we'll talk a little bit more about where she's playing next season, the context of that, and also where she ranks for us so far in the 2026 draft. As the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up big bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, to open segment 3, a little bit more context on where she is playing next season. She'll be playing for a team that's going to give her minutes to play. And that was the big thing with putting a player on loan. You see it in European football as well. She's going to be playing probably north of 25 minutes per game in the first Spanish division. We'll see a lot of her context there, the growing pains of playing in such a high-level league. But also, what I'm most excited about for her is playing with Taylor Mikesell, who is one of the best movement shooters in the world. Having Awa occupied in the mid-post, the low post, just having Mikesell run off a bunch of screens with Awa just initiating everything is just going to be a beauty.
Yeah, and she's going to get to keep building chemistry with Elena Buenavida at Guernica this season, who's going to be coming off the bench for them probably. But it's going to be an interesting roster. Mikesell and Fam is a very, very fun fit, with the stuff that Awa can do as a high post hub. And you can run all sorts of dribble handoff combinations. You can run all sorts of two-player actions where she's coming off the ball, she's coming onto the ball and just kind of scoring wherever she can. Mikesell is such a fun player who can kind of mold into this on the ball, off the ball. It's going to be a very young team and a lot of fun players.
They also have Notre Dame legend Maya Dotson, also Phoenix Mercury legend Maya Dotson.
And 17-year-old German Annika Soltau, who's also 6'4", is listed on the Guernica roster.
Yeah, she's draft eligible. I believe that she played. She's good.
Yeah,
she's good.
It's going to be a very interesting team to keep an eye on. I will definitely be watching those games.
So
and it's free on YouTube. Always. That is an absolute win.
And with Awa, a lot of the questions with international prospects relate around, do they care about the W? By all indications, she wants to play in the W. Basically everything she said, that is her goal, her main goal there. She turned down loads of high major Division I offers. Hypothetically for you, if she did play for, let's say it was like Arizona, one of these,
Louisville was in there,
yeah,
right?
Louisville was in there, South Florida, they're going to try to get any international prospect.
Yeah.
Just, I believe UCLA was in there, Mississippi was in there. A bunch of schools were out trying to get her, but would she be an All-American for you if she was like a freshman coming in?
She'd absolutely be up there. If she can kind of find us, if you can get a system where they um, build around kind of a high hub big, which none of those teams except maybe UCLA are really fitting that mold that would maximize her skill set.
Yeah.
She could easily come into NCAA and put up something like 17 points, 9 rebounds, and 3.5 assists, and just numbers that are basically unheard of at the college level. I think that's absolutely something that she is capable of.
But I think for you can agree, we're glad she did not go that route.
Yeah,
As
she's
fun as
good
it,
enough to be in the WNBA already.
and that's the problem. If she went to college, she would play 1 year, go through some growing pains, just adjusting to playing in the U.S. But after a year, it would just become too easy, and
Yeah.
we'd have to wait like 3 years of just like, yeah, she's good. 3 more years,
Yeah.
and we've seen it with like Paige, Caitlin, all these prospects, these premier prospects, even Juju now. We're just waiting, and they're just too good.
Yeah.
Like,
Like Aaliyah Boston would have been a top
Yeah.
3 pick after her sophomore season.
so we'll have her in the 2026 draft instead of it
Yep.
being 2028. So
Yeah. I think that's right.
for you, is she the number one prospect for you in this 2026 class so far?
I think so. The 2026 class is relatively weaker than the couple classes around it, which is not to say that it's like a bad class. It's not like 2021 levels, but it's just it doesn't have quite the same star power. Awa Fam bumps that up. I think she is pretty clearly to me the number one prospect in the 21 class or the 26 class.
Yeah. Nobody in a couple tiers from her for me.
Yeah, yeah, she's gonna be 2 or 3 grades ahead of everyone else on that board, I think. Unless there's some sort of massive developmental jump from like Kiki Rice or Flau'jae Johnson, which are
Shoot,
possible.
Flau'jae could get there, like with what we saw
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah,
Like this class, Flau'jae is like number 2 for me right now. But there's also Olivia Miles could return. Same with Raven Johnson. Those are 2 players with redshirt years, but they're eligible for the draft in 2025. There's also Kiki Rice, Ashlyn Watkins, Lauren Betts. But I think Awa is just clearly the better prospect there.
Yeah.
For me, when you look at her skill set, any team could use this player. She can fit in any situation, and that's why you talk about generational prospects, is because what they can do can fit in any context, and there's no way you would not take her one, no
Right.
matter the team. Like, even if you were Las Vegas, hypothetically, picking at 1,
Imagine Asia playing next to Awa Fam. That is incredibly fun. That's absurd. Like there's no situation she doesn't fit into. She could play. Honestly, put her in New York. Have Stewie play the 3. We can make it work. We'll find ways to make it happen. She's
Phoebus
good
at the
enough-
2, at the 1.
Yeah, I mean, they tried the lineups with like Benigilini Hamilton running the 1. You can just run a lineup of everyone being 6'4". It's like there's all sorts of options. She's a good enough passer. Her ball handling is not like at an elite level, but it's coming along. And she can space. She can score through traffic,
Yeah.
and she can defend basically any position you want her to defend. She's good enough to fit into whatever system and play anything. She could probably play the 3 sometimes. It's
Put her
not going to maximize her talents, but she could.
Put her in Minnesota and just let her pass.
She's honestly like a perfect 5 next to Nafisa Collier. That defense would be disgusting. That offense would be incredibly fun. There's no situation where, like, imagine her in LA next to Cam Brink. That's incredibly fun. There's so many things that she can do. She's going to be an awesome professional basketball player.
And maybe the most likely outcome of those all is her playing for an expansion team, just because,
Yeah.
let's say they're really bad in 2025.
She's a Valk.
That'd be fun.
That-
I think
yeah.
just the idea of being the only player, like there's no franchise history.
Yeah.
Like,
Being the Angel McCautry for a team.
you come into LA and there's Candace Parker, there's Neko Gumake. You're just the only player there. But Awa Fam, we want to do this episode no M today, so we want to talk about just Awa Fam, one of the best, most fun basketball players in the world.
For sure.
Thanks for Women's Basketball, your first listen every day. Join me next week for continued coverage of the WNBA, women's college basketball, the draft. Make your second listen Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.